So we're opening on this random street where there's a woman sitting alone on the ground drinking. She's in rough shape, the kind of rough that makes you wonder how life got this bad. Turns out she's working the streets to survive, and here's the kicker. There's this weird spike-shaped growth on her arm that's been there for 8 months, but she hasn't noticed because all her energy is getting drained by something else. She's pregnant with twins. Those twins, Yoichi and All for One. Wait, hold up. The biggest villain in My Hero history and the founder of One for All are twins. Born to a woman barely surviving on the streets. That's an origin story that makes Batman's look cheerful. Before we learn anything else about this woman who gave birth to the 2 most important people in the series, we cut to her alone by a river. She delivers both boys on the dirty riverbank and dies moments later. Her body's lying there motionless, and here's what's creepy. We see baby All for One's hand next to her with that signature hole in his palm already formed. So this kid came out ready to steal powers on day 1. That's like being born with your career already figured out. 1 year later, the world changes forever. A glowing baby gets born, and suddenly people everywhere start developing superhuman abilities out of nowhere. Scientists figure out it's not random, there's a brand new gene causing this. But here's what's wild. The glowing baby was born 1 year after All for One and Yoichi. So All for One's actually older than the kid everyone credits as the first quirk user. Governments decide to make all this quirk information public, which somehow leads to the brilliant conclusion that powered people aren't human anymore. This causes exactly what you'd expect, complete chaos. A few years pass and we see this extremist group that's against meta abilities walking through a destroyed city. They spot little All for One wearing a trash bag as clothing. The group decides to avoid him because they don't want to get infected by an orphan of the paranormal. As they turn away, All for One gives them this look that screams murder, then unleashes spike projectiles from his body that tear through each member like they're made of paper. He shreds them. And here's the revelation. Those spikes belong to his mother. That weird growth on her arm before she gave birth? That was a quirk manifesting in her body. She might have been the actual first quirk user, making Yoichi and All for One potentially the sons of the true mother of quirks. The moment All for One was born, he instinctively stole his mother's ability. We get these disturbing images of demon baby All for One clawing at his dead mom. Someone call an exorcist because this infant is nightmare material. The narration drops that from birth, All for One believed the world belonged to him, and if someone can't offer value, they're worse than worthless in his eyes. We see young All for One attacking more people when small Yoichi interrupts by throwing a can at him, begging him to stop. All for One's response: kicks his weak, fragile brother. Here's the tragic part. Yoichi's so weak because during their time in the womb, All for One stole all their mother's nutrients. So this guy was committing sibling rivalry crimes before even being born. Despite his philosophy about worthless people, All for One keeps Yoichi around. Not out of brotherly love, he sees Yoichi as property he owns. Fast forward to the brothers slightly older. Yoichi's reading comics because he can't handle complicated books yet, studying through pictures. He mentions wanting to be like Captain Hero from the story. They sit together reading as the narration explains that despite all the evil in his brother, Yoichi believes there's goodness in All for One because he remembers All for One holding his hand when they were babies. That's quite the stretch, but we'll allow it. 3 more years pass. Teenage All for One tells Yoichi about the glowing baby gathering 10 million supporters. He doesn't understand why, since 50 people in India got quirks before the glowing baby, so he has no right using fame to command people if he wasn't actually first. That's why All for One killed him and stole his power. Yoichi's shocked, asking how he could do that. All for One says he's following the comics. The story had One for All and All for One, and he loved that concept. Hero fights alone with a secret identity, One for All. Villain rules through fear, taking everything, All for One. Just like Yoichi dreams of being a hero, All for One dreams of a world where everything exists solely for him. So this entire centuries-long conflict stems from All for One taking a comic book too literally. That's like starting a world war because you really connected with a children's story. Scene shifts to older All for One and Yoichi in this vault prison. All for One asks why his brother keeps resisting and should just come with him. Yoichi fires back that the world's in chaos and quirks shouldn't be used for selfish gain. So the starving twin is lecturing his demon brother about morality. All for One grabs Yoichi's face. Without power, you can't enforce ideals. Dreams become reality. Reality doesn't follow ideals. Then drops the bomb. He's rewriting the reality where Yoichi won't yield. Red energy crackles as All for One forcibly shoves a quirk into Yoichi, who's convulsing. He explains he found one even Yoichi's weak body can handle and named it Yoichi, because his brother was the first thing the world gave him. So this guy named both his brother and the forced quirk the same name because he views his sibling as property. Door bursts open. Kudo and Bruce storm in. Leader. All for One's gone. Now, they're calling Yoichi leader while rescuing him. Kudo grabs Yoichi's hand and they run down a dark tunnel. From All for One's perspective, watching his brother flee, time starts shifting weirdly. He calls out, "Wait, why are you running? I just gave you power." All for One yells, "Who are you? Get away from him. He's mine. If you're not mine, then you don't." The last thing we see is Yoichi's severed hand floating in the air surrounded by blood. So All for One just obliterated his own brother for trying to escape. That's like destroying your favorite possession because it tried to leave. After sending his brother to oblivion with blood everywhere, All for One locks eyes with Kudo. As they stare at each other, we see the stark difference between them. All for One's eyes are angry, empty, colorless, lacking any humanity. Kudo's eyes are full of tears, vibrant with color and reflecting the image of the man standing before him, the person who just murdered Yoichi. We cut to All for One in a penthouse, looking at the only thing left of his brother, his severed hand. Looking at Yoichi's hand, All for One realizes the quirk he gave his brother isn't in the body anymore. That shouldn't be possible unless Yoichi passed it to someone else before dying. We cut to Kudo and Bruce, where Bruce is examining Kudo medically. Kudo mentions his body feels weird. Bruce asks if All for One touched him during battle. Kudo ignores this, asking for test results. That's when Kudo learns he now has two quirk factors, his own gear shift ability and one tiny, seemingly meaningless quirk. If only he knew what that small quirk would become. We get this split perspective moment where both All for One and Kudo are thinking about Yoichi at the same time. Both versions speak. "I couldn't stop my brother. He only sees people as toys yet kept me alive. If only he cared about others." They merge together, finishing, "The power to give and take could have been the kindest in the whole world." Both Kudo and All for One realize simultaneously Yoichi's will lives within Kudo now. We see All for One's life flash by, killing Kudo and Bruce, starting a cult, meeting Dr. Garaki, failing to steal One for All, cutting On in half, murdering Nana Shimura. Then All Might appears in their first fight where All Might obliterated half of All for One's head. He got sent to the morgue, but Garaki saved him. Back in the present fighting Bakugo, All for One wonders if Bakugo's descended from Kudo but dismisses it. He killed Kudo's entire family. If they were related, he would have known at Kamino. But then it clicks. It's not Bakugo's looks, it's his eyes. Right now, Bakugo's eyes are filled with determination to defeat him, exactly like Kudo's were. All for One realizes he can't keep fighting and regressing in age because he still needs strength for Shigaraki. He decides it's time to finish his goals of eliminating Bakugo and reaching Tamura by unleashing every single quirk simultaneously and going plus ultra. Inside One for All, Yoichi's vestige spins around panicking as he senses massive power surging in his brother. We see this absolutely ungodly grotesque monstrosity that is All for One's full power. Sweet mother of everything. This is berserk-level nightmare fuel. There are heads, limbs, and mouths protruding everywhere like a body horror artist's fever dream. This horrific form is called Release Every Quirk Factor All for One Goal. Edgeshot realizes the plan. Use all that mass to propel forward at impossible speed through Bakugo straight to Shigaraki. But All Might notes doing this will revert All for One's body back to infancy, making this his genuine final gamble. Flying Bakugo stares at this abomination and just smiles, saying, "Are you stupid? There's no way this dumb thing will win." Surprisingly, we flash back to Bakugo's birth. We see the happiness on his mother's face and his father's tears of joy. The story flashes through 3 specific moments, telling Midoriya he'd get stronger after their second fight, declaring his quirk is strong, and bullying Midoriya way back at the series start. All for One launches propelling himself across the city, destroying everything in his path. But as he builds momentum, Bakugo stays perfectly still and just shouts, "Burst." All for One's entire head explodes, forcing him downward and eliminating all momentum. Bakugo, flying toward the now stationary villain, cheerfully explains this wasn't luck, but calculated strategy. Since rain interferes with his quirk, making pure explosive sweat harder to produce, he weaponized this weakness by throwing diluted sweat drops into All for One's mouth during their previous exchange. Bakugo responds, he's always been intelligent and doesn't need multiple quirks to win. His explosion quirk is plenty. All for One, realizing the explosion destroyed his trajectory, becomes consumed with rage. Bakugo unleashes Howitzer Impact, followed by an ungodly barrage of explosions, screaming back, "Shut up!" All for One furiously regenerates, attempting to land any hit with everything he possesses. It's genuinely beautiful watching the Explosion Boy match a centuries-old demon using nothing but rage and weaponized perspiration. During this explosive battle, All for One realizes not all his quirks function properly, and it's not from the relentless explosions hitting him. The thought strikes, is my body too small and fragile now? But then truth gets revealed as inside the vestige world, a very young child, All For One, encounters Hawks' quirk vestige with other people. Hawks' vestige, wearing that signature confident grin, cheerfully explains to All For One that in his fury, he lost control of the vestiges and quirks inside him. This allowed Hawks' vestige to rally all other uncontrolled vestiges and encourage rebellion against their captor. Back in reality, All Might watches Bakugo and comments how everyone's accumulated physical and mental damage throughout this war has finally reached critical mass. Bakugo connects directly with All For One's face, unleashing devastating power while thinking of Deku trying to save him back in episode 1. This is our story. He's thinking about everything in his life as he blasts All For One to the ground with one massive explosion. Bakugo's parents, All Might and Yoichi, watch from their respective locations. All Might declares this is the end for All For One. Bakugo, still floating in the air, bloodied and battered, says, "I could never defeat you on my own." The dust clears on the ground. We hear All For One's voice. "I need to go a little further. I must transfer my quirks to Tamura. I must strengthen the me that's been swallowed up by Tamura. Once I take control of that superior body and mind, based on Tamura's condition, my existence inside him must have been taken out before I could use my trump card. There is still chance for victory. If I take control of Tamura, I can take one for all." We see All For One hugging his brother. "Yoichi, I can't go on without you. Negative things remain in memory a lot longer, right? That's why I want to thwart the future of others." He thinks of memories with Yoichi, reading books together, Yoichi running away, killing him. "I want everyone's eyes to be on me forever." He's walking like a toddler as All For One regresses to a child's state. So All For One's final thoughts are about possessing Tamura and stealing one for all while clinging to memories of his dead brother. Bakugo comes before this child. "You haven't disappeared yet." He spouts out lots of blood, can barely keep standing, about to fall. He thinks All For One is on the verge of disappearing, could barely speak, could leave him be, it will be all right. But he remembers telling his friends, "You're pretty damn strong if you can remain standing." Bakugo puts his leg forward, staying upright. "I must achieve absolute victory." Child All For One attacks from his mouth using his first quirk, the spike ability he stole from his mother. Looks like it hits Bakugo. All For One smiles. But moments later, we see Bakugo stopping the attack with his own mouth, catching the spike. "It's time for you to take a nap." All For One thinks, "I was being controlled by my emotion. This isn't me." He repeats, "I don't like it," as he becomes even smaller, shrinking to the size he was in his mother's womb. Hawks thinks if all stolen quirks return to their original owners, that would be nice bonus. All For One turns to nothing because of his age regression going full reverse. Bakugo tries doing All Might's Camino victory pose, but falls. I wanted to strike an All Might victory pose. Lying on the ground, he still keeps his hands up as his victory pose. Izuku, give it your all. Next episode preview shows during the fierce battle with Shigaraki, the worst happens. A quirk from one of the previous One For All users gets stolen by Shigaraki. History's greatest villain incoming.